Grand Rise, guys and goddesses. Kings, queens, titans, chaos beings, celestials, star seeds, occultists, alchemists, adepts, initiates. Whatever you are, remember today is the only day that matters. You are the only one that matters. At those crossroads, in that crosshairs, we realize that everything is a reflection of this moment, and it's a reflection of you to learn from. Welcome to the God Hour podcast. I'm your host, your spiritual advisor, occult psychologist, Papa Lucifer. And this is season 3, episode 37, Project Revert. Sometimes, for the most times, especially now, we know shadow work is very important. Putting in that work. With the current shift going on to that quantum phase, that quantum aspect of the energy, things are coming into a more dense program. The shadows are becoming more dense, so you're able to see them and deal with them. But sometimes that path to understanding our inner child is blocked by not dealing with them. Not trying to be, not rather than replying to what we have to reply with no emotion to learn, we tend to revert to the old mental habits. We tend to thrive in the old mental behaviors. And this week, we're going to be getting into these aspects. This week's session, we're going to be getting, split it into threes. Three's that magic number. We're going to get into the terrible twos and the tremendous teens, or the troublesome teens. Density and dexterity. And then we're going to smooth it out with suppression and reanimation. But before we get into that, we got to get into this God thought that started this. And then this week, something special for y'all, I'm doing a shadow reading. So it's going to be very in-depth for what you're going to learn, what you need to accept, what you need to forgive, what you need to release, what you need to learn, where you're going to find a healing recovery, and where you're going to find that help. So let's get into this. Welcome to this week's God Thought. In transmuting through the pain and the trauma of most of our lives, when it comes time and time again to actually reply to the healing process, we start to, for the most part, finding ourselves reverting back to the safety of what is the toxic chemicals that started the mutation that created our identity. If not in the environmental aspects, but it's in the reactions to the what or our ego versus the how the subconscious reprogramming. Why are most stuck on the ending and not embracing the new beginning? This is the aspect of that intellectual. It's a very prideful thing to know where you came from, the knowledge of yourself, pyramids, and all this shit. But how are you applying those algorithms or allowing those light codes to be imprinted into your new subconscious program? The only way to access these light codes is by the fact of going through the aspects of shadow work. What you're noticing now is that this density in the shadow work, these density in the shadows are becoming more dense. They're affecting your going forward. You feel like you're in a sense of stalling. Your self-conscious is up. You're feeling more self-conscious. You have your self-confidence. You have a self-confidence problem. Because now that you have the information, and now it's actually time to actually shift, you're not shifting. You're feeling stuck in what may be in a job. You're feeling stuck what may be in motherfuckers thinking about this next voting aspect, and problems with America and all these things. All of these things are reflections of you. Think about the whole aspect of the light versus light. Let's take two aspects. I'll use the Ice Cube thing to bring this into clarity. Ice Cube took a plan for Black America and he took it to two sides of one that's in the current light and one that's in the dark based on the unknown. One that you know and one that you don't. The one that you do know chose to have that conversation and the one that you don't know chose to have that conversation. That is an aspect. Everybody went to uproar like, oh my God, I can't believe he went to this, da-da-da. You have to stop applying to this shit based on emotion. Because when you're applying based on emotion, that what factor your ego is automatically searching for, the aspects in you that react to that trigger. So you're only reacting. As opposed to me going based on the how factor, how can this benefit me in that space? How can it benefit me based on where I'm at right now? And that takes that how to think, that creating that discipline and going forward and discipline and doing what you want is going to require you to move by understanding these triggers of these emotions, your emotional triggers, getting to the source. Everything has a source, everything has a beginning, everything has a middle, everything has an end. We get so stuck up on what is actually the ending, what motherfuckers call the beginning, our beginning, which is only our ending when we came into this space because we were going back to sleep, that we don't find the middle point, so we can't get to the middle, so we can't get to the beginning. That's why most people now that they're trying to be in that project revert, let's revert back to our safety net, it's not working. What you're seeing right now is the play out of you cannot revert. It's the end game. It's the end game for your identity in the beginning for you to tap into your true self. If you haven't been doing the work, guess what? It's gonna start showing. Everything meaning this is the year to 2020, eyes wide open, new vision. What are you seeing and how are you dealing with what you see? But we gonna get deeper into this. But not before I give you that shadow reading. Yeah, Papa gotta give you that shadow reading, give you that deep in depth. So, yeah. Let's get into it. Welcome to the guy. As I promised you last week, I said I was last week I did a discernment reading, and this week I said I wanted to do a shadow reading to get deeper, because my main focus of when I counsel is shadow work. So let me get these cards shuffled up, and we're going to get into the aspects of this reading. A shadow reading is a 6-card spread, and it gives us the insight based on what we need to accept, and in this case will be the sun card, the inner child, the vitality, and success. What you need to forgive will be based upon the Queen of Wands, the self-respect, the self-confidence, the establishing that self-worth. What you need to release will be that based on that Wheel of Fortune, those old life cycles and resisting the aptitude to change. What you will need to learn from, what you will be learning from once you do that release, will be based upon the Two of Wands, which is about progress, decisions, and discovery. This leads us into the aspects of one of my favorite cards. What will you find? Where will you find your healing and recovery? It will be based in pausing, the surrender, and letting go. That's all based into the Hangman. And then that 5th card, that 6th card, will be where you will find your help. It will be based upon the 3 of Wands and expanding your foresight. So let's get into this reading. The first card that we have up on deck is the Sun. The Sun indicates the only way to accept the new vitality of getting more in touch with your inner child is going to be based on dealing with the terrible twos or the turbulent teens in regards to accepting and not reverting. Honesty is going to be that main key to transparency. Honesty is that key to getting to that middle point and having transparency in that middle point. This will challenge the identity, similar to like raising a child. The acceptance of who you are to become will require you to be confident in that you are here for a reason outside of just getting by. I don't know how many times I gotta tell people this. You're not here for what you thought you was here for. You're here to learn. This is that training ground. Your inner child has been fighting for some time now, enforcing you to stop denying those monsters within you. Stop denying that primordial fucking energy. It's time to let that energy out and play. You have to accept the rules of the underland to find yourself. When you look up the original Alice in Wonderland, and the original book is actually called Alice in Wonderland. It's actually a lot deeper. It's around the same time when I wrote the Grimm stories. But let's get back to this reading. The Queen of Wands sets the tone of forgiving yourself. The Sun is the aspect of accepting, and the Queen of Wands is the aspect of forgiving. Be bold, remain confident in your honesty with your self-evaluation and setting those boundaries. The boundaries that you need to set to move forward, you have to keep that same energy. Remember, all the energy is encompassing. All the energy you're taking and embracing your inner child and stepping up and actually becoming that monster, becoming that villain to your humanity, keep that same energy when you're setting those boundaries. That job, the relationship, the friends, the family, they still may be good to somebody, but they're no longer any good to you. You're starting to realize, I say it all the time, family becomes relatives. The family that you grew up with are now relatives, and the friends that you were around, they were associates. Either you were associated with working for them, or they were associated with working for you. Your family, in that aspect, they were the ones that supported you based upon the trauma, and now that you're not dealing with the trauma, they're only in relation to you based on the trauma that you healed yourself from. But that's even deeper. The energy coming down the pipeline right now, they can't embrace or embark in the path of that energy. You've been too busy trying to make connections, only maintaining those very attachments. It's time to stop putting yourself out there to keep this external piece, trying to keep everything. Yeah, I'm my baby son, I'm all this bullshit. And actually start dealing with the internal conflicts within. The old ways you used to use to revert to your safety are now dampening your confident strides for control, leaving you in this sense of fiery discomfort. Guess what that is? That is your power. To become intimate with their power, you must become intimate with that aspect of forgiveness to be able to wield that power. This will enable you the ability to release. This is all shown up in that Wheel of Fortune. Spinning in a circle, trying to maintain those cycles and only holstering outstanding karmic debt. Looking for the normalcies and the inherently flawed scape is only going to make the new responsibility seem overwhelming to bear. Releasing from the old mindset will force you to step out of the passenger/navigator seat into the soul driver's seat. This is your path. It's time for you to drive. Shut up and drive. This is a critical turning point in your life. It's going to be a critical turning point in your life. All you have been through is now the backdrop to what seems like what's spinning out of control, but in reality is your quickening. Your sleep to how you used to deal with surviving, all that shit seems to be off. It's time to release from and stop fighting the change and to invest into this new body of energy. This is going to open you up to the learning process. Learning that you are the ace in the star play. This is that willing to learn through the Two of Wands. Becoming opening to the aspect of growth, expanding to the new territories of the unknown scapes in order for you to find that new fertile certainty. You aren't just ready, you just may not be ready to make the moves, but this placement of the Two of Wands, it's about the discovery and establishing that path. So you ain't gotta worry about, oh my God, I'm not ready for it. This is that path that's setting you up for, I need to do this, I need to actually start concentrating on discovering my new path. No more short-term goals with long-term planning. It's time to buckle down and work on the task that will turn you into the star player meant to play in this realm. Play in the next realm. This takes you into the aspects. This learning will activate the healing and recovery through the suspension of the hangman. For some, the universe, through that 5 knuckle shuckle of this retrograde happening right now, the 5 planets and rotate them. These 5 planets that are in fucking retrograde, that 5 knuckle shuckle you getting hit across the head with, it's gonna force you to pause. Releasing from the old mental models and the behavior patterns, that's going to be the only way that you're going to be able to see these new perspectives. That's going to be the only way you're going to see these new perspectives. The opportunities will come alive. They're going to come alive in the nighttime. That you are being forced to hit the brakes. In order for you to see the new opportunities, you actually got to sit there and... You ever tell somebody to sit back and smell the roses? This is the aspect of you smelling the fucking roses. Check your routines. Are they based on detox or diet? This isn't it's not enough to say, it's not enough just to say, I need to change and I need to do this. This is going to be that point when you're drowning your ego in this suspended state. If you are not willing to feel more, if you're not willing to do this, then you're only going to feel more restricted than you already are now. Instead of investing in reverting and instead of investing in that reverting and resisting this shit, it's time to accept your calling and invest in the new changes to evolve. This will open up the doors to what's going to bring you that help. It's time, based on the 3 of Wands aspect, getting into expanding past the old strategies and coming to your ultimate potential. Broadening your horizons through study, travel, and learning. Remember, set that space in your mind and then build on that space in your mind. If you want that new job, build that new job in your mind. This is all aspects. I'm going to use these examples on the lower aspect. If you want that new job, put the intent of that new job in your mind. You want to go to school, put the intent of the thought process of you going to school. Smell it, feel it. Smell it, feel it, taste it, all that. Feel it, taste it. Because that's going to be the only way you're going to be able to step forward into bringing your conscience into that space so you can have the recall of what you need to do to move forward. Well, let him wait. Okay, cool. You already are more aware of the things the opportunities that exist. That's going to be the key to taking into that. Take advantage of this potential. You must stay committed to the unknown path. I know the path may seem scary. I know the path may seem like you ain't ready for it, but you would not be in this space if you were not ready for that path. That's what I'm going to tell you straight up. If you were not ready for the path would not keep showing up in front of you. What you need to do is actually, through that hangman, drown your fucking ego and step fucking forward in the decision of doing what you need to do. Go through the aspects of the river Styx, the underworld. Go through the river Styx into the ocean, into that ocean of where their only limit is the current flow of thought. You're going to have to go through that river Styx in that underworld aspect and tap in and meet at that where that river bows out and it goes into the ocean. And the only thing stopping you in that ocean is the current state of thought. Remember, we have to go from what to how. It breaks those winds in your sails. Embrace that wind. A lot of us don't even realize that the light codes that have come up in this fucking space, in this state of time, the codes that have come up in this space and time are the things that we need to be fucking dealing with. A lot of us don't even realize that is what we need to be dealing with. We're so busy with the hustle and bustle of trying to keep this shit together, not realizing that's the shit that's keeping you from getting to where you need to get to. And this has been your weekly shadow. This has been that weekly reading. I want to do a very in-depth shadow reading. And if it resonates with you, take it and move forward with it. If it didn't resonate with you, humble yourself and find out why. Keys. And if you're interested in a reading, shadow reading, consultation that starts with a shadow reading, life path reading, anything of that nature, or any other services, you can hit up GottaCoalchemistLLC.com, or you can inbox me, Facebook, Instagram, and you can get all the information that's going to be coming up in the plug talk. But let's get into this episode. That shit resonated with me a little bit in my changes what I need to do in my life. So I know it resonated with you somewhere. But let's get into this breakdown, get into this session right after the break from our sponsors. You feel like you got a voice, feel like you got something to say? Feel like you have something that can move the masses or get everybody tuned in and you want a bigger audience? Whether it can be anything from something like the God Hour or anything from like sports, news, fashion week, whatever it may be. Let me put you on to something. The easiest way to do it is with the Anchor app. Biggest thing about it is free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will even do all of the distribution for your podcast for you so it can be heard on many other platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money. You also can make money from your podcast with a minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. It's everything you need to get your voice heard and get what you feel that's in your heart and enter to your heart out to the masses. If you're interested, download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. Welcome to another God Hour podcast. I'm your host, Papa Lucy, Papa Lucifer, Lucy, whatever makes you feel most comfortable. Go ahead and use it. We don't challenge you. But the first segment we don't get into tonight or today, I'm recording this at just ignore that. The terrible tools and the troublesome teams. Sometimes it works. At a point in time, it worked for you to benefit from acting like an inerrant or an irate emotional brat, or moving with the false sense of pride and individuality that you have been through the worst, so you deserve to get what you get. Here's the problem. Transmuting pain only creates more separation from the true intent of getting in tune with your inner child. Getting to know who you are will require you knowing the whys and the purposes of what you were. That's the aspect when I think about the terrible tools. When I think about the terrible tools, you think about a toddler, you think about the troublesome teens, you think about that teen phase when you are in that space in your mom, you're like, you know what? I ain't got to do this, and I'm individual, and you finding yourself. So think about when you was 11, 12, and then think about when you was 2 years old. Some of you have 2 years old. Some of you have 2-year-olds. Some of you have 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds. So remember, everything outside of you is a reflection of you. This is no different. So when it comes into this aspect that when we revert back to an emotional state or we revert back to the emotional state of where the trauma began. This is why I say a lot of people are actually they're actually, you can be physically grown, have all the equipment to be an adult, but if your emotional aspects, your mental aspects have not been developed past a certain point, that means they got stopped based on trauma, then you're literally walking around what you're thinking, like, take the aspect of when we were like, when I remember I was younger, you're grown. Think about what that really did to your mind. Really think about that. Put that into your thought process. What really was happening when you were told that you'll know when you'll get the understanding when you're grown. You'll be in this process when you're grown. This is where that terrible tools or acting in an irate emotional manner to stay in your safe zone. Remember, we're stepped out of the good and bad. It's about positive and negative. So at a point in time, that positive aspect of thought, and positive, you acting like a spoiled brat, you acting jealous, you acting in that manner, you acting and feeling that you're doing something in that manner, that's what's setting you back now at this point in time in your shadow work. It's coming to the surface, especially at a moment especially right now, that 5-knuckle shuffle that I talked about in the reading, that 5-knuckle shuffle that got you all lined up in the space that you in right now, that you ain't dealing with what you need to be dealing with. The shadows are becoming more dense. That's due to the fact that we're no longer in that carbon 12 composition. We're in that carbon 7. That carbon 7 being that number of creation. So we're in that aspect of creation. So the shadows of the traumas and the things that you haven't dealt with are becoming more and more real. They're becoming more and more dense. They're starting to, the reflections that are taking from that that are siphoning your energy through those shadows, they're doing more outlandish things for you to, it's not to hurt you. Well, it's not to hurt the real you, it's to kill your ego. So this is no different in the aspect. When it comes to the healing process, if you think about a 2-year-old and you telling a 2-year-old that this medicine is good for them, is going to make them feel better, and they'll fight and they'll kick and they'll scream because all they want to go do is watch TV. All they want to do is play with their toys. All they want to do is do what a normal 2-year-old does. So take that same thought process, take that same thought, this is shadow work for your ass, and look at what you do based on the mindset of a 2-year-old. You don't do your meditations. You're not doing your journaling. You're not doing your research. You're not doing your studying. You're only taking the opinions. And this leads into this adult field. Now that you're grown, you feel like you don't even have to do the research to even get the information that you need. So what you do is you spend more time reaching for things that attach to the fundamental mindset that you're stuck in. So you're looking for a reason. You're operating and transmuting still through the pain that you have not dealt with. It's time to forgive yourself. This is why I'm saying and I'm pushing that honesty is transparency. That honesty is the ultimate key to your transparency. You saying that you want trust, but you don't trust yourself. You say you want someone to be honest with you, but you're not honest with yourself. So how can you ask for honesty, the quality of honesty, if you're not being honest with yourself? Really think about it. This is something that you really have to think about moving forward. You're in a space right now where you have no choice but to do it. You're in a space right now where you have no choice but to do the work. You're being stalled out. Things that you're wanting to start getting done. You want that new job. You want this new shit, but you feel like no matter what you do, everything getting shut down. There's a reason for it to be shut down. There's a reason that it need to be shut down, because like last week when I talked about those frequencies, how can you want a space of peace? Space of peace. Back in the day, it was easy to get that space of peace because that energy that was required was in a more wide format. It was easy for you to do certain things and struggle and sweat by the brow of your the sweat off your brow, the blood and sweat and tears. and you can get what you wanted. Now, this is the time of chaos. Chaos comes before creation. The only ones that are actually complaining about change, complaining about actually taking the inherent steps for change, are the ones that are not willing to invest in their evolving. They're not willing to invest in their elevation. They're stuck in a space where they're used to getting what they're getting. They're clinging on to their check. They're clinging on to their cards. They're clinging on to the little bit that they're getting within this space. And now that it's run out, now they're looking for reasons to fit their fundamental space to stay where they're at. Ultimately, most people that do that in the aspect, you think about a teenager. A teenager will only go as far as to not lose for some allowance, for some the roof over their head. That's the same mindset that most motherfuckers are in right now. You're doing just enough not to lose your house. You're doing just enough not to lose that little bit of money in your bank account. You're doing just enough not to lose what you're getting. And then you're upset because now you're feeling like you're being used. Think about it like this. Everything that you're feeling, remember, it's only a reflection of you. So if you feel used by your environment or the external stimuli that's in your environment, you need to check yourself and see what the fuck you're using. How are you using them? Are you using them? What emotional imbalance are you using them for? A lot of times, this is one of the biggest things that happen is people look for happiness in others. You look for completion in others. No one can complete you and no one can make you fucking happy. You're not going to be looking for that. That's an emotional aspect based upon being a child. That's the child mindset within trauma. I didn't get enough love as a kid. I didn't get the big piece of chicken. My dad didn't play basketball or baseball with me. Think about what you're transmuting through this aspect. Because now you're sitting in this space right now and you're literally saying, I'm not going to do what I need to do. And I'm basically, since I didn't get it when I was at that point, I'm holding everybody in this space accountable. I didn't get enough love from my mother. My mother stole from me. My mother lied to me. My mother did all this shit to me. So now I'm going to take it out on every woman that I go past. My dad wasn't in my life. My dad hurt me. My dad did this. So I'm going to take it on every man in my life. You are creating that through the transmuting, through the trauma. So you're automatically, remember, your subconscious, what you put in your subconscious mind, you looking into somebody's eyes and you not dealing with the shit that you need to deal with, and you looking into this person's eyes and you looking at them and you saying you love them and you like them and you feeling them. Everything that, all that noise that's in the back, all that background noise that's in your that's playing from your subconscious, when you're looking into their eyes, that's what you're putting into their mind. That's what you're programming into them. You're doing the mind control. Most people do this shit all the time so much that when you come into a space where you can't do it anymore, then you sitting there like, wait, it's not working. Wait, I'm not getting my way. Wait, I'm not getting what I'm used to getting. I'm not getting the little bit that I am used to getting. The tables have turned because that's what you're doing. Every time that you sit here literally and you tell somebody what you don't want and all of these aspects, you talk about the problems, you don't talk about you're so used to selling the aspects of the issues that you've had before. You're programming that into their conscious mind. I want you to think about this. You're programming that into their conscious mind. So all the noise and the things that you haven't dealt with, when you're looking into this person's eyes, you're programming that into their subconscious. So now when their ego, that program that's now in front of you, when their ego is active, it's going to be searching for ways to hide from the things that you're hiding from. They're literally going to search for ways to hide from the shit that you're hiding from. That's what they're doing. So you're not dealing with an aspect or something, and you come into a space, and now you got this brother in your life, you got this queen in your life, and they're willing to do everything for you. They're taking you to another level. They're challenging you. They're making you want to eat right and do right and be right and put you in a better state of mind so you can be in alignment with what you truly desire. But then you go into this aspect of reverting. Most people go into reverting based upon the unhealthy relationship that, what was your first, let me slow down. What was the first unhealthy relationship in your life that you saw? What was the first unhealthy relationship in your life? What was the relationship between your mother and your father? What was the relationship between, if not your mother and your father, the maternal figure that was in your life, and the maternal figure that was in your life, and the paternal figure that was in your life? So we can make it a broader spectrum. What was the first relationship that you saw? Because the first relationship that you saw, you now are transmuting through that aspect because you have not healed from it. Now you sitting here trying to prove to others that niggas I can find a good man based on, no matter what you did to me, mom, I'm gonna find me a good man. But then you get the good man, and then you don't know how to move in that space. You can't accept those challenges. So you naturally go back and revert. The same thing with brothers, the same thing with fellas. You didn't have that balance or that background. So now you're going through this space doing only what seems to be natural to you. But it's not natural to you. This is the aspect this is when we get into these things with shadow work, and the understanding that everything from that space, being that reflection, is something to learn from. The things that are in your life right now that used to serve a purpose, you could go run to this friend or go run over here and have these conversations. You're noticing that your conversations are not the same. You're noticing more that you're forcing yourself to go into these spaces. This is just being in honesty. You're noticing that you're forcing yourself to have these conversations. You're noticing that the people that you used to deal with, you're not able to deal with them because you're seeing exactly how much drama you're actually seeing them for what they are. You're seeing the reflections of the terrible teens, the troublesome teens, and you're seeing the reflections of the terrible twos. Motherfuckers ain't getting their way. Now they mad. They've been doing that shit. They've been doing that shit since you met them. And now that you see it, you're like, oh my God. This is fucking up. A lot of motherfuckers' sleep patterns are fucked up. I did 4 readings today. I did 4 readings before I even came on to start doing the recording. And motherfuckers' whole fucking sleep patterns off. They're like, I don't understand. I'm doing what I'm acknowledging I'm acknowledging the shadows. Isn't that enough? No, that's not enough. I'm acknowledging where I'm falling back at. That's not enough. That's only one half. That's only one side of the coin. Remember that honesty is the best. The honesty is going to be open up the transparency so you see the other side of that coin. Do you really trust yourself? This is going to be that question for a lot of people. A lot of people are finding out that they really do not trust themselves. Can you trust yourself to be in a space with whatever addiction, whatever vice can you trust yourself in a space right now with whatever vice it is that helps you escape? Can you trust yourself to look that vice in the proverbial eye, the metaphorical eye, and be like, I do not need to escape anymore. You are my escape. I need to deal with this. Because you're noticing that now people are doing. Take it like this. Think about the aspect. I always use music. Think about the aspect of music. Think about the aspect of music. Music went from party drugs to selling drugs, right back to doing drugs. Party and do drugs to escape the work of the man, to sell drugs to get from under the man, to now doing drugs in aspects of dealing and coping with being under some type of oppression. That's a reflection. When you are actually doing the work, you start seeing this, you start seeing the patterns, you start seeing the repeat time loops and patterns around and everything. The first drugged up rapper that I heard, when I was listening to them, like, I was like, damn, this motherfucker's really in fucking pain. But then I went back to old music, and these motherfuckers that were talking about that pain, they were really in pain. This realm is built off of pain. Think about the inherent flaw. That means there has to be a constant state of death and rebirth. That's what it means by inherent flaw. In this case, we're going to use it as that. The inherent flaw of this space is going to be life and birth, death and rebirth, death and rebirth, death and rebirth. That's the cycle. You think about spring, winter. You think about spring, winter, spring, summer, winter, spring, summer, fall, and winter. Think about those seasons. The seasons are a reflection of you. Right now it's fall. It's about to be winter. Even though you don't feel cold, does that mean that it's still not winter? Does it still not mean that it's time for you to slow down? This is that harvesting aspect when you think about October being harvesting. But if you haven't been doing the work, what the fuck are you harvesting? What are you reaping from what you sowed? What harvest are you bringing in other than the same bullshit? You bringing in the same energy that you brought in from last year. You ain't even looking at the tools that you have acquired to do the work. And that's going to be your downfall, your downplay. That I'm spoiled, so I should get whatever the fuck I want based on the irate attitude of transmuting literally through a childhood trauma, or the terrible teens, and now you want to live your life to the fullest because you weren't able to live it because whatever happened to you in your teens, that's not going to work anymore. You see it every day in Love. You see that shit every day on Love and fucking Hip Hop. You see that shit every day on like a Basketball Wives. Grown ass women, grown ass men that are grown ass men in the physical, but are actually still children. They have not dealt with their traumas, and they get paid for not dealing with their traumas. So you feel that's a reflection of you saying, I should get paid for my trauma. I should get paid. Should get paid for my pain and suffering. I should get my reparations for my pain and suffering. In order for you to get something of that nature, of that magnitude, that trauma has to stay existing. In order for you to keep getting what the fuck you getting, that trauma got to stay in place. That means you got one of two choices. Either you're going to stay there with them stinky ass feet and keep changing out your shoes, or you actually going to do the work. You actually going to sit back and actually work, and where you're being suspended at, where you froze at. This is the aspect of when you think about the placebo effect. I got into it in the lecture when I got into the nocebo effect. Most individuals are so used to a certain space, a certain mind frame, a certain state of being, and being negative, and getting things from the aspects of being negative, that when positive things come into their escape, because positive things come into their escape, it's such an overwhelming aspect of responsibility to actually let that positivity in. That's where the reverting comes from. This is where most people revert. You come into a healthy, something comes into your alignment, into your escape that's truly positive. It's on a higher frequency. It's on a frequency that you've been calling for. What happens when Betelgeuse came down, it made that more, that when the Betelgeuse came through and the energy shifted, similar to every other shift that's happened to this point, it made all of that shit easier for you to acquire. But with that great response, with what everybody knows, with great power comes great responsibility. This is where you meet that point. The contradiction between the life that you lived and where you're going to go, there's a contradiction. It's called the unknown. That's that unknown point. That's that middle point. The honesty the honesty and accepting your past aspects and studying it is studying and learning from your past. That aspect of forgiveness, going into deeper understanding and helping you gain compassion. That's the only way you're going to bridge that gap. That's the only way you're going to be able to jump across that gap. Remember, there's a hole right there. The only way that you can cross that hole is by throwing something into it. What are you throwing into that hole? That becomes the key, what it is. What are you throwing into that hole? What are you willing to throw into that hole so you're able to walk across it? That's where them dead bodies are going to come from. We talk about we want to catching bodies and all this shit. When I think about it right now, and I think about rap music talking about dead bodies and killing niggas and killing each other and shit, I actually like, yo, go ahead and do it. Because all you're killing is identities. When people always talk about all your music does is talk about killing each other and all of this shit, they're not killing each other. It's talking about killing the identity. You see, once you understand the program, you can manipulate it for your own gain. So I can listen to a 21 Savage song, this nigga talking about killing niggas all the fucking time, and I understand that I'm killing an identity. Every time I hear 21, I'm thinking about what 21 identities do I have to kill? This is how you start manipulating and using that energy. Instead of further becoming distracted by somebody telling you that, you see, this is what they're trying to do to bring you down, and this is what they're trying to do to bring you down, and this is because all you're doing is taking the information. You're gonna literally, people, what they do right now is taking information to fit their fundamental space of what they need to do. You're only taking enough information to do what serves a purpose for you. So you leave all the other information out there. That's like, if I was to say, okay, give an example. If I was to sit here and say, I need to condition my locks. Use that as an example. Let's say I want to condition my locks. And I watch a YouTube video saying how to condition my locks. And it says, and all I pick up from the video is I need a bag or some type of basin to soak my hair in, and I just soak my hair and my hair is going to be good. But in the beginning of the video, it told me it told me the products that I needed. It told me the temperature of the water. It gave me all the important parts that I needed to complete that cycle. But I didn't listen to the first part of the cycle. So now my hair is sitting in water that's too hot. There's no soap in it. So I pull my hair out and it's even harder than before because all I did was put hard water. All I did was put water on my locks. So I did not get the necessary result. This is the aspect of activating those light codes. The only way that these light codes will be activated that are within you, custom to within you, is understanding that those light codes are within those shadows. The light codes are going to go to the strongest aspect of you. And since the strongest aspect of you is based on your identity, guess what? The traumas, the triggers, the problems, the things that you ain't dealing with, that's where the shadow codes are going to go lie in. And they're going to lay there in a sense of being dormant. And then you sitting there like, nah, man, but I read this book and I read this book, but it ain't doing what I needed to do. Nigga, that's only part of the program. Once you get the information, how are you applying it? And most people get this information and you only apply it to fundamental spaces where you're at right now to keep you surviving. And you noticing that shit ain't working. I keep telling motherfuckers that trial period that being woke is a trial period. Being conscious is a trial period. The Afrocentric movement, listening to different lectures and going to debates and listening to Love and Hip Hop based on debates and listening to all that shit. Now you starting to see in 2020, the reason that they sustained for so long is to keep your ass from not doing what the fuck you needed to be doing. 2020 is that space of hindsight of seeing the exposure of what the fuck you haven't been doing. So you listening to these individuals outside of you give you information to make you feel good, but are they giving you information to make you feel better? They constantly hitting you with a barrage of problems, but they never bring you a solution. And when you give them a solution, it's some short-sighted aspect to help them. Girl, you got to understand that it's that nigga fault. It's that nigga fault. No, somewhere in your homegirl, it's her fault. Somewhere in your homeboy, it's his fault. But you're afraid to have that conversation. You got to have that real ass honesty with yourself. You're going to have to. Or else you're going to sit here and what you're going to sit here forever and be kicking and screaming that, oh my God, I've been. At a point in time, you got to grow up, basically. You got the mic smoking. It's so hot in here. At a point in time, you're going to have to fucking grow up. You're going to have to really you're really going to have to hunker down and actually create something that's based upon you growing. Not this sustaining, not this surviving, not making enough money just to say that you did something, but you really going to have to do the work. You really going to have to start cleaning up your spaces because your spaces are in reflection of what the fuck your mind's like. Most people, remember, full mind, empty house. Empty house? No. Full mind, empty house. Full house, empty mind. Most people keep filling their spaces. And this is more than just fucking TVs and electronics. I'm talking about most people are filling their spaces devoid of putting in the work that's required to maintain that space. So right now, I record the podcast in the living room. In the living room, I got my altar set up. I got the space where I do meditate and elevate and all the lectures, everything. Everything in my space is a reflection of something that I do. I work in this space. So everything in this space is charged to me doing my works. Man, we gonna get back into this. Let me click this over and we're gonna get right back into this. Yeah, what I was saying was before we actually start the next segment. But you have to realize that at this point in time, that's not the purpose of what you are. That's not going to be the purpose of that's not what you're supposed to be doing. Remember, this is that training ground. If you haven't been doing the aspects, you staying in these environments that are no longer sustainable to charging you, and you're wondering why, like, oh my God, I'm not getting the same result. I'm not getting the same love and attention, because what you were getting, sis, was not love. What you were getting, bro, was not love. We have to come out of this mindset of lusting. You're becoming too open too quickly to be accepted based on your flaws. But you really got to ask yourself the question, would I love myself? You setting up these impossible contracts with others saying, could you accept me for this and accept me for this and this and this and this? And you making this whole contract. The next time that you're sitting in a situation or a position, it's real shit. Next time you're sitting in a position, you sitting in a position to actually have a conversation with yourself, all the things you're expecting others to accept for yourself, to accept of you. I want you to write that shit down. This is one of the many exercises that I give clients. I want you to write it down. Everything that you are willing, everything that you want someone to accept from you, accept of you, based on the trauma aspect, I want you to write it down, sit in front of a mirror with a candle, and I want you to speak those things into the candle. I want you to focus onto the candle. I want you to focus all of those aspects, and you put them into the candle from your subconscious, and I want you to read it to yourself in the mirror. How much of you are you willing to accept? One thing that I remember someone saying back in the day was, would you allow your daughter to date you? Remember, it was a concept motherfucker said that, but was talking to a guy, talking to the brothers. Would you allow your daughter to date you? Would you allow your son to date you? Moms, would you allow your son to date you? Aunties, would you allow your nephew to date you? Uncles, would you allow your niece to date you? Date someone that's in the aspect of how you are. Really ask yourself that question. Would you date you? And this is where that honesty comes in. And especially with that honesty that we're talking about, the density and dexterity. Your density and your dexterity. The shadows that you're seeing right now, you're noticing that those shadows that you haven't dealt with, they're becoming more heavier, or they have a more sense of denseness to them. They're in your face more. The shadows and the things that you aren't dealing with, they're starting to come up faster. You're starting to see yourself become more restless. You're seeing yourself become more easily angered. You're becoming more sad. All of these aspects are your shadows taking shape. Think about all the thought forms and thoughts that you had based on that trauma. So we're thinking about the aspect of the trauma that you were stuck in based on the terrible twos in emotional development and the troublesome teens of development. Think about those two aspects and then pull these two aspects into that and think about all the thoughts that you created, that you had, all the things that you thought based upon niggas ain't being shit, bitches ain't being shit, your job ain't being shit, the white man ain't being shit, all the things that you said weren't shit and you were condemning based on your trauma and based on what you were going through. Now with this new energy and focus, the retrograde, with this new retrograde tapping into that subconscious, and now you're in this new space, think about what you're looking at right now. What you're looking at is the direct result of that. What you're looking at are the direct results of those thoughts. Where do you think them thoughts were going? You thought they were just going into the nether regions? Them thoughts was going into the astral field to the level where they could get to, squeeze into based on the martyrship aspect. When you martyring niggas saying he was a good man and da-da-da-da. The other lost niggas, when they transition, they stuck up there, them counterfeit spirits and shit, them counterfeit thought forms. Where do you think you're pulling your energy from to stay in your space? Remember, if you're in a frequency of shame, you only can pull from the energy of shame, the frequency of shame. If you stuck in grief and anxiety and anger and imbalances, you only can pull from that. You only can pull from that aspect. Before you could pull from that aspect and you can strive through. You could strive. But ancestors that have transitioned have done great work and great strides. Whether you're looking at entertainers or whatever it may be, they've taken straight strides and they healed themselves to get to a certain point. So that energy that's in the ether, that's no longer available for you. This is what's affecting your dexterity. Your dexterity to sweep it away, sweep it under the rug like you used to, it's not working. This is your quickening process. This is your quickening phase. I'm looking at my notes as I'm reading. This is your quickening process. This is that quickening phase at work. The very wheel of what is becoming misfortune after misfortune after misfortune, that very wheel that's becoming more and more misfortune that you seem to not want to deal with, that very wheel that keeps spinning, that you can't seem to get nothing off it anymore. You used to be able to hustle just enough to get a lace front, hustle just long enough just to get some new J's. You used to hustle just enough to get the rent paid. Now the rent ain't seeming to get paid. Now you want to get into that new space, and now you seem you can't get there because the old ways of how you acquire what you got in this space, in your old habits and old mentalities, is not going to work over there. You want something of peace, love, joy, and enlightenment. You can't have peace, joy, love, and enlightenment in the same space as fear. Remember, love and fear cannot be in the same, do not share the same space. Two different frequencies. So when I'm going back to the aspect of the frequency that you're operating from, that's why you've been getting what you've been getting. And now you can't seem to get any more. Now you may feel a sense of, now you feel perhaps a sense of feeling used. You feel worthless. You feel defeated. You feel this sense of agony. You feeling this pain. You feeling restless. There's a reason why. Because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So now the spirit realm, now that veil is thin, it's coming in and it's interacting into this space. It's taking you out of the old aspects. It's taking you out of your sleep it off. It's taking you out of that sleep it off. It's taking you out of that I'm going to do it later. It's taking you out of that state of procrastination. It's exposing those flaws that were within you that you tried to hide behind the lights and the glitz and the glamour. It's hiding by it's showing you what the fuck you need to see, but it's up to you to actually deal with it. This goes into the aspects where I was talking about those light codes. Throughout the aspects of space, in this scape, light codes have been coming down. If you didn't know about Beetlejuice, in the aspect, go look at the movie. Panic broke it down in a lecture. Go look at the damn movie. I remember the first time looking at the movie, I felt some type of way. I couldn't explain the feeling that I had when I was watching it, but I was like, yo, this means something. That's why it's interesting to me. Even when I think I was like 12 or 13 when I first saw that movie. But now you in this space where what I'm saying now, the woke in the consciousness, that was a trial period. Some people kept extending their trial period by putting in different email addresses. Some people kept extending their trial period by putting in different phone numbers. Some people put in different addresses of all sorts and kinds. And now you realizing that you used every address that you possibly could use to divert from doing the work. Now the address is, now what you need to address is right there in front of you. And all that back mail, all the bills in this aspect, in that thought process, all those bills and those collections are now at your door. Everything that is time, now it's time for you. Now that karmic debt, now it's time to be collected on. And you're not going to be able to, I'm just going to move. I'm just going to use something else or do this over here. No, that doesn't work anymore. Think about the reflections in your life of what you used to be doing. And now that you want this prime grade A energy, you can't do them things anymore. I've said it before. That's like right now, I know that in the next couple of weeks, I'm actually going to get my license. I know I'm going to go get my license because I've already been led and told by the spirits that, yo, you're going to start making some moves. And the only way that you're going to be able to make the moves is basically getting your stuff in order where you're at. And I took that in stride, and I took that first stride when COVID-19 first came through, and that virus was the reboot phase for me to actually start being full in what I do now. So now that I recognize that pattern, my dexterity in acquiring the knowledge, my spiritual dexterity is crazy. Downloads is crazier. I'm seeing shit crazier. I'm remembering shit out of books that I've never read before in this lifetime. I'm starting to see all of my life cycles. The only way that you're able to access the light codes to access your old life cycles is those aspects of those traumas. The trauma is the initiation trigger to getting you into that space. But you got to deal with what's happening right now to deal in order to go back to be able to use that energy back then that's laying back there on the table, basically. You got shit laying on coffee tables and in fucking spaces. You got shit laying in coffee tables and in cupboards that you can't have no access to, even though it's right there in front of you. This is the aspect of the veil being removed. Now that the veil is removed, the only thing that's stopping you is accessing that light code to get into that cupboard, to put that key into that lock. But you haven't done the necessary work to unlock that lock. That lock come with a key, then it come with a combination. Remember last week I was telling you about that password? That password is also a self-destruct code. Most of y'all are scared to put in these self-destruct codes, these passwords, because you're realizing that it's going to destroy everything that you once knew. This goes into the same aspect when you think about somebody that's leaving from the bonds of religion. And I remember listening to a Ray Higgins lecture way back in the day. And he had said, but we'll be lost, man. We'll be lost. That's the aspect of people coming into this space. You're lost in this space because you have not accessed the necessary light code. And now that this space is right here in your face, you ain't got no choice but to activate that light code. Or you're going to continue being restless. You're going to continue being tired. You're going to continue feeling defeated. You're going to continue feeling this extreme sense of guilt, extreme sense of anger, sorrow, and depression and anxiety. Because now guess what's active? Now that this energy is active and we think about viruses, those repressed memories that left scars that seem painless, they're active within what I said on the lecture Friday, that cerebral syphilis. So now you're trying to remain blind. Now that you're in a state to where it takes you not being blind, in this 2020 hindsight, you've now gotten your vision back. So think about it like that when Jesus gave niggas their vision back. Or you think about the Christos energy coming to that space. Your energy is risen to a certain level inside you and it's healing aspects in order for you to do the work. That's why your body heating up faster. That's why you feel hotter. That's why you getting so hot that you have a sense of restlessness. Because it's not necessarily that you cannot go to sleep. It's the aspect that you're not taking the steps you're not taking the steps that you need to take in order to make sure that your sleep or you going into that stasis is going to be for the best benefit. That's why when I got led to drop that set your intentions before you go to bed mantra, that's the most important. Setting that intention in your mind. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? Meditate on that before you go to bed. And I guarantee everything that's going to pop up when you come back and you recalling it, everything that's going to come up are going to be the aspects of what you need to do to get to it. There is no more, I'm going to do it tomorrow, because tomorrow doesn't exist. I've been telling you since day one of me even starting the podcast or even doing God Thoughts that today is the only day that matters. You are the only one that matters. Everything is a reflection. Every other day is a reflection from this point. Everything outside of you in an environment is a reflection of you. This is your training. Not just, Panic been saying that. Bobby Hemmett had been saying that. Valentine, they've been saying that. I'm parented from that aspect of energy. So when I got the light code, I was like, okay, cool. It's time for me to do the work. And that's why I'm sitting here right now, giving you this message that's resonating with you. You're going to have to do this work. It's impossible. I remember one time I read a meme way back in the day, like in the beginning, like 3-4 years ago, and it still holds true to today. And it was like, if one thing that I always read was like, if you want to hide something from black people, hide it in a book. And now it's in the aspect of the truth is in plain sight, and now people are hiding from the truth. So think about that aspect. Motherfuckers are actually hiding from the truth because they're afraid of that honesty. They're afraid of the transparency that will be involved, that will come out if they have to deal with the change. You know it's time for you to actually do what the fuck you need to be doing. You know it is. You got the reflection in front of you when you saw Ice Cube and he wrote up his contract for Black America, and you're looking at it based on emotion, but you ain't seeing what it is. He went to the unknown light and the known light, and he said what side was going to do what it need, what side was going to take on what was needed for it to happen next. That's nothing more than a reflection of something that you need to be doing. He took that step. It's time for you to take that step. It's time for you to apply the knowledge that you have acquired to both sides in order for you to have that transparency to move forward. Because based on the answer that you're going to get, you won't have to accept it regardless. Whether it's something that's negative and it ain't going to, whether it's something that's negative, whether it's in the aspects of being positive, but it doesn't serve you in this realm that you're realizing, or it's something negative and it serves you to move forward. That's how you go. That's the only way you're going to be able to set the boundaries. That's the only way you're going to get your dexterity up. Most people they're calling themselves detoxing, but all they're doing is simply dieting. When you think about a diet, most people that when they're doing a diet, when you think detoxing, you're actually in the aspects of diet. You do it long enough to get a certain result. You're doing things long enough to get a certain feeling, a certain sense of feel good. But the key to a detox is to go through that point to where that shit feels utterly horrible to get to the other side. Because everything that's coming up in that side that's making you that now you're feeling lighter, you're feeling faster and all this shit, that's all that weight being taken off. That's you becoming empty. On the other end of a detox is the aspects of sustaining that emptiness in order to heal. The first half of the detox is to cleanse your system. The second half of the detox is to sustain that emptiness in order for your body to activate the healing. So when you think about, you acknowledge a trauma and it comes to the surface, so now you acknowledge it. Now you feel good for acknowledging the trauma. The second aspect is to become empty to have the understanding and forgiveness to become empty of that trauma. That's the only way your body's going to initiate the aspect of healing. Most of us like to revert once we get to a certain point. And then we'll blame it on our imbalance of emotion. I was upset. I was sad. I was in a depressed state. I was feeling overwhelmed. You think about the excuses that you're making. Now go back to what I said in the first segment. Write down all of those excuses and recite them to yourself. I would like you to accept me based upon these terms. And the terms are your excuses. Would you accept yourself based on those excuses? So with that thought process in mind, who is going to accept you based on if you wouldn't accept you on those excuses, how can you expect anybody else to? You have to accept them for how they're going to accept and move forward. That's that boundary. A lot of people are in spaces right now where it's no longer serving them any purpose, but for the sake of remaining in their safety, even though the safety is like the oblongs and it's right under a fucking toxic waste dump, You rather continue mutating and transmuting through the pain than actually healing. You rather put up memes all day talking about you healing and this is the aspect of healing and all this shit, but you ain't doing none of the work. You rather sit there and constantly go back into this, and I'm going to be honestly and real with your ass. The reverting shit is over. What you noticing is that you're not able to revert back into that hiding space. This is what a lot of people are noticing right now. You're not able to revert back into your little comfortable cubby hole that set the tone for you can be like, well, I was upset. Well, think about what I've been through. That shit's not an excuse anymore. I remember for a long time, a point in my life, that was one of the things that I used to do. I would revert back to my excuse would always be in relationships of any nature, especially love relationships, was I would get to a point and then I would revert to self-sabotage. Yes. And this is therapy for me. When I do a podcast, it's therapy for me. When I do a lecture, it's therapy for me when I tell those stories. Because I can look back and be like, damn, that's how far I came to be able to speak on it. To be able to speak on it with a transparency and use it to teach others and give others insight on how to learn and how to move forward. That's the key aspect when you're coming into the healing process. But I remember being in spaces where I would not get super close because I had separation anxiety, because I lost a lot. I lost like a slew of family members. I lost slews of family members up to a certain point in my life. So when it came to people becoming close to me, I had this adept fear that if anybody loved me, they would leave, or they would perish, or they would die. This is all based upon traumas of not knowing father, not knowing family members, and all this shit. So when I got into a relationship, I would only go to a certain point before I would start the process of self-sabotage. I would do things that I knew I shouldn't have been doing. I would say things that I knew I shouldn't say. I would make accusations. I would put myself into this state. And I remember when I started seeing it in reflections, I was literally, what some people do when they're in a relationship is they try to they're in a state of isolation. They try to pull you into the state of isolation. So they want you to experience life only the way that they experience it. They only want you to do the things that they're doing. They only want you to see things one way. The aspect of a healthy relationship is the ability that when one person is in a high of irate anger or whatever, and they dealing with a trauma and a trigger, one person on the other side has to remain in a neutral balance point. This is one of the main things. This is one of the biggest things that I teach whenever I'm doing whether I'm doing guided meditation or I'm doing a reading or a consultation. I'm exposing them to that aspect of understanding that you have to be at a neutral point outside of the emotional imbalance. I try to say all that in one breath. Outside of the emotional imbalance, to be able to recognize the patterns that trigger the emotional imbalance. Because until you're able to do this, you're walking around eggshells in your own fucking space. You walk around on eggshells on yourself. You afraid to step and make a certain move or a certain turn. You start making these false accusations and assumptions based off of what? Your ego. Your ego was the one that was hurt and is always seeing all the aspects of you being hurt. Your ego's feeding off of the hurt. So you try to revert back into that hole by saying the things that would cause separation. And I've been there. That shit is not fucking fun. After a while, you start looking at yourself like, and then you go into this moment where you go back into that emotional childlike state, that terrible too. And you want emotion. You want people to give you things based on that emotional process. You had an irate, you blew up, you got mad, you got upset. And now that you calm down, sometimes y'all don't even apologize. I know, because I didn't even apologize. I would try to talk over the situation, or I would try to nuzzle up under the situation as a way of not having to apologize. And this really started showing me like my inability to say I'm sorry or my inability to apologize was an inability for me to really apologize to myself. On the other end of that spectrum, me being overly apologetic was showing me that I had no value. I didn't understand the value of what an apology or forgiveness actually was. So you look at both sides of that. On one side, you're looking at when you're overly apologetic, whether you're overly apologetic or you're under apologetic, or you don't apologize, you're under apologetic. What you're acknowledging, what you need to realize with that trigger is you do not understand the true aspects of forgiveness. This is all about being honest with yourself. So if you're not honest in saying, hey, I don't understand what forgiveness is, I need to understand what true forgiveness is. How can your dexterity, how can you expand past the boundaries of those old mindsets and old behaviors? You ever heard somebody always apologize? You ever heard a person that never apologizes? It's because they don't understand the value of an apology. That would be the same person that'd be like, oh, you apologizing just because you got caught. If you didn't caught, you would never apologize. That's another aspect of understanding that this motherfucker does not understand what forgiveness is, or understanding what the cutting the cord process is. I went over to one of my subscribers on the lecture on Friday talked about they were going through the cord cutting process, and I went into the depths of the cord cutting process for the class so they can have deeper clarity. This is going to help you in the aspects of when you moving forward. It's only going to get heavier the less you don't deal with it. That's going to be the reality of it. It's only going to get heavier the less that you team to put the work in to deal with it, the more heavy it's going to become, the more overwhelming it's going to become. I'm just saying. And that's going to leave you in that state of suspense and reanimation. And that's what we're about to get into next. We get into this like, had to clear my damn throat. My water. I remember laughing, watching a Bobby Hemmett lecture and watching him like literally towel himself off every 5 seconds. And my air conditioning right now is on 69 and I'm still burning up. That's how high my energy is when I'm putting in the necessary. I'm following what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm outside of the realm of even caring. Like, I'm sitting here sweating, and partially because of my intermediate fasting, because I don't eat after 8 o'clock. I don't eat before 12. I only ate one meal, and that was at 4. So my body's literally burning in that aspect. My body is literally burning to give me the energy, because I'm far from fucking tired. Let me put it like that. I'm far from fucking tired. And I'm sorry about that. I should have told you that with the break coming up before we get to that last segment. My bad on that. But yeah, this last segment, we're going to get into the aspects. We just started talking about what's going to keep you in suspense. We're going to get into suspense and reanimation. What you noticing right now is the way that you were used to acquiring a certain amount of information and a certain way of living, it's not working anymore. But that's one of the biggest things you're noticing. You used to being able to simply like and devise damn nigga, my fucking English is going away. The language is going away. You're used to being able to simply like any device, like you're simply able to hit like any device, like TV, your phone. You're used to hitting restart and just starting over. You're used to being able to say, if you're sitting there playing Mortal Kombat 11, you're used to playing Mortal Kombat, and if you lose, just hit restart. Or dump some files out your phone and make up some room. This new energy is forcing you to record for that upgrade. Similar to like when people get iPhones, and you know when the new iPhone come out, they were slowing down iPhones for a little bit, or even like that actually happens with a lot more than just iPhones. But when your new iPhone come out and they slow down, or what you call it, they give you an upgrade right before, I think like a couple months before the new iPhone come out. I don't have iPhones, so I don't know. This is only based off what I've researched. And it slows down your phone, so you got to go get the new phone. That's where you're in right now. To think about your shadow work as that aspect. Think about your shadow work as that. This is no longer going to be that time where you're going to be able to sit there and be like, you know what? All I got to do is hit restart, clear out some files, and I can get back to what I was doing. No. Your whole way of being has to be overhauled. I've been telling y'all that. Just being black ain't enough. Just being conscious and awoke ain't enough. You gonna have to put in this fucking work. All that thought process of praying and worshiping is now being in the aspect of becoming death rights of that deity or that energy that you're working with, and working within it to kill your humanity, to rise into that birthing and reanimating into what you're supposed to be. This is the aspects of suspense in that reanimation. Right now, you feel like you want to sense that everything's being stuck, that you are stuck. And that natural aspect of reverting is reverting back to a normal state, to the before you got stuck and then starting over. What you noticing is, yes, you're supposed to be going back, but it's not going back. You're supposed to be going back, but you're not going back to start over. This is where forgiveness comes in, or the main aspect of forgiveness comes in. You're going back to forgive. You're going back to your inner child, that aspect of forgiving your inner child for not knowing what you know now. This is an intention. This is actually an intention ritual. You're going into the aspect as I move I've been spinning my wand all day. You're going into that space to forgive your childhood. You're forgiving that aspect of yourself for not knowing what you know now. This is going to do two things. One is going to release that inner child and allow it to be able to rest so you can do the work that you need to do with that energy. And two is going to allow you to go further back. I had an interesting I had a new subscriber to the podcast, and they were like, they did their ayahuasca trip and they experienced an ego death. In my mind, I was like, oh, that's cute. But there's multiple ego deaths. Remember, you're a multi-dimensional being of light. You're a multi-dimensional being of light. So the first death that you acquired, the first death that you had, is going to be the first of many deaths. Remember, that hole is still there in the ground. So you have one body in the ground. That hole is about 6 inches deep. So you need at least 7 bodies before you can go forward. You need at least 7 bodies. I'm being fucking straight real with you, straight honest with you. You're going to need at least 8 bodies in that hole before you can move forward. This is going to be that space of suspend. This is why you see, this is when the spirit suspends you at a certain point in time, so you can use the tools that you've learned to actually allow yourself to go forward. This is why when the spirit keeps your ass stuck in a certain space And now you mad and upset at the world because you ain't seeming to get what the fuck you want. Because you have to be able to use those tools in that space. You got to use them tools in that space. That's what is being shown you. The most important factor of this, as I go through my writings on the wall. I wanted to put the note out there because I wrote it down earlier. It's a known quote, but it fits into this space, and I'm going to look for it now. I be writing shit down and be forgetting. That's why I don't be writing shit down. That's why I don't write shit down. And when I do write things down, like when I did the treatment for this podcast, when I did the segments for the podcast, I write down the title of the segment, and then I write down a quick paragraph. I write down a nice little paragraph with a nice little chunk of information in it, so I can be like, okay, cool. That's where I need to. This is what I'm about to build off of. That's the reason. Yeah, you'll start noticing that more and more. You are going to start realizing that in your new state of reanimating yourself and bringing yourself into this, expanding past the old patterns and the old behaviors, there was something funny that I saw. I was looking at, I follow Dr. Boyce Watkins on my Facebook, and I think I follow him on Instagram. I think I follow him on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, because he puts up some information that makes you think. And he put up something about individuals, the rich mindset, and he puts up things about the rich mindset. Oh, I don't want to do that. Let me stop before it sends me into something I don't want it to read. It never lets me go in there the way I want to go in there. But he put up something about the rich mentality versus the poor mentality. And I talked about the rich mentality and the poor mentality on a podcast episode of season 2. But he was talking about the rich mentality and the poor mentality. And he put that Netflix, he put drugs, Netflix, not studying, not learning were in the poor mentality. And in the rich mentality, he put studying and these other aspects. And I always go to the comments because the comments is where the most fun shit's at. Just to have a laugh. Cause that's my love. That's my excitement for the day. I'm like, damn, these niggas really are not thinking or broadening their perspective to understand what the hell he's even fucking saying. He's challenging your thought to force you into another position. And I'm gonna get into that after I say this. But he said something about Netflix, and everybody was like, man, there's some good educational shows on Netflix. He wasn't talking about people only get the information. This is the aspect that motherfuckers only get enough information to stay suspended where they're at. He didn't say Netflix was bad. He said Netflix is a poor mentality because because if you're not using it, you can be using it just because it's within the poor mentality or in a negative mentality aspect does not mean it serves you. It does not serve you a purpose. I sat here and watched. I watched Gotham in a given time. Watched Gotham, Peaky Blinders. What else have I been watch? I watched Originals, and I watched these shows, but I have an understanding of what the show is. That's the important part. This is what I gathered from it, from my researching and searching for the answer to help me expand and go further. So I'm like, when I watch Originals, all types of signs and originals about shit and how shit play out in that world in between the worlds. I watch Castlevania, mad fucking anime. There's all types of signs in there that you need to pay, that you can, if you paying attention to, you'll see it. Lovecraft Country. There's nothing much there other than the understanding that it's good for you to see an aspect of understanding how shit is projected in an augmented fashion. And if you're not trained to see it, you can't see what you need to see and take what you need to take from it. And this goes into the aspects of suspension. A lot of people have been in a state of suspension based on feeling that they've been conscious and feeling that they've been woke. They're in a state of suspension. What you're seeing now in this 2020 vision, 2020 hindsight is everything that you clung to and that you gave your energy to, and saying this is what we need to be fighting for. This is what we need to be doing. That's what we need to be working on. That's what we need to be exposing. In going into that space of suspension, you allowed yourself to become exposed, because this is how it works. You gotta give to get. So the only reason you are attracted to something that's exposing something is because that allows you to hide. The only reason that you go into certain situations with certain individuals because it allows you to hide. You've been hiding behind other people's problems. You've been hiding behind other people's issues and situations in their life, so you ain't got to deal with yours. But here is the fun part. That reanimation process, that heat that's rising within you, that restlessness that you're having, is forcing you to see it for what the fuck it is. Now you seeing these people that they're full of drama and they haven't grown up. The only reason that you resonated with them is because a part in you didn't grow up. Now you're starting to see them for what they really are, and they look ugly as fuck. This is the aspect of seeing things based upon energy. Like, I can look at pictures of people and be like, yo, that motherfucker is, whoo. And they can be bad. They can be gorgeous. But my first mindset, I'm thinking like my man's on ATL when he was like, what's a 5-year plan like? Esquire. I'm thinking about Esquire. When you start really thinking, when you really are not moving based on the emotional aspect, you're going to start reanimating a lot of these old relationships. You're going to start reanimating a lot of these old escapes in your mind, because you're going to see to where that thought led you to, because you have the example of where that thought's going to lead you to. If you sit here and continuously move into that hamster wheel that now is of misfortune, you're going to end up in a situation that the people that you say that you never could be, you're going to end up being just like them. Not in the image, but in the aspects of the axioms or that black box that they're in. You're going to be stuck in that barrier, that binding circle in the aspect of where they're at, because that's the only place you know how to get your energy from. Since you don't want to deal with your shame, your guilt, your grief, your animosities, the things that you need to deal with, you like being in spaces, living vicariously through others that are going through their shame and their grief, just so you can say, at least I'm not doing that. Dang, man, all they got to do is this, and this right here. If the answer was that so fucking easy, why haven't you applied it to your life? I did apply it. Okay, cool. Now that you applied it, how are you maximizing on how you applied it? Most people are just above that line. I always talk about this. In Samuel Onweor's book, Revolutionary Psychology, he breaks down the aspects of that line. That line is within every mythos, including when you think about the equator. Everything below that line is in heat, is always going to be a constant state of heat, and everything above that line is in a constant state of changes. It's always changing in the weather aspect. It's always an inherent change above that line. This is where people like to stay in the heat or stay in that toxicity, because it gives them a certain amount of heat that they can feed from. They can sustain based on that heat. They can eat based on that heat. But to go above that line, you have to be able to accept those changes and invest in the evolution through those changes. You can go right into the maps when they were talking about, because black people were in different parts of the world, that their bodies augmented to that space. That is the explanation of you. When you're in a different space or in a different frequency, your body is going to change. Now that you're in this new space, your body is starting to change. Some of y'all are a lot on the heavy side based on stress. some of y'all are unhealthy based on that stress, and it's starting to, if it didn't already reflect, it's starting to reflect, and now you're starting to see it more. It's harder for you to get that weight off. I take this into the aspect of, I remember studying for a little bit when I had to do biology and anatomy. I don't know why I took that class, but now I know why I took that class. But it was explaining the aspects of stress and your environment can cause weight gain. And after 35, your body no longer has the snapback feature, or your body is not able to go back into a certain state. That's why you see that's why you see people that are like, after about 45, they start wanting to go on longer walks. They start wanting to go on walks. They start wanting to change their diet. They're reacting to the stimuli. As opposed to somebody that's in their 20s, their early 20s, remember, you're in reaction to the stimuli. So your mindset is, I have all of this time ahead of me to get myself right. So right now I'm gonna party hard. There's nothing wrong with the aspect of partying hard. There's nothing wrong with the aspect of living your life, your best life. But at a point in time, you're going to have to realize that, I'm going to use this scale of age 25. Around 25, in that traditional aspect, you're half of 50. So you reached half of a cycle. At 25, that's when you start really thinking about how your life is about to be set up. But if your mindset was like, so tradition, that's a traditional projection. That's based upon no trauma, everything was perfect. But in reality, that's the external state of being when we think about people saying we're given this false narrative to live by. You live by the false narrative every fucking day. Because that false narrative is based upon not being oppressed and not struggling. That narrative is based upon not based upon the default coming from nothing to come into something. So when you think about this reanimation process, you're literally coming from nothing. You're coming from everything into the nothingness. That's going to be the key of you going into that void. You have to come into this shit. You're coming into nothingness. That's the emptying process. That's the first part of that detox. You have to allow yourself to be, when I said before, you have to allow yourself to become empty. You have to allow all that shit to come to the surface and sweat out, and then go through that process of being empty so you're able to start healing. Because you can't heal. Your body cannot heal on a full stomach. That's why when I first started personal training, and I learned when I was studying the aspects of intermediate fasting, nigga, I intermediate fast all the time. I don't eat but 1 to 2 meals a day, and that's after 12 o'clock. The only thing that changed me and I only ate 1 meal a day is because I split my smoothie into 2. I had my post-workout smoothie, and I split my smoothie. I made a little too much, but it served the purpose. Bobby Hemming would say, you got to put that shit into your favor. So I had another smoothie. So when I came home, when I came to the house, I did meditate and elevate, did everything I needed to do around the crib. And I started doing the recording and putting everything together for the podcast, videos and all that shit. I pulled out my other smoothie and I sat it down beside me. I started sipping on my smoothie when I was doing meditate and elevate. But I made me a cup of tea. I still got my tea sitting over there on my in my power circle. One of my mini power circles that I got around the crib. And then I sipped my tea, did my sat down, did the aspects of the podcast, put everything together for the podcast, started recording. And then I was like, you know what? Let me sip. Then I finished sipping on my smoothie. What I noticed was my body is now becoming trained into needing less external stimuli. My body is needing less outside of me to feel fulfilled. That's a notch. That's coming into the aspects of that's notching into the higher levels of enlightenment. So to be able to notice that, and then to be able to notice this pattern, this healthy pattern that when I'm going to bed, and I'm noticing that when I'm meditating before I go to bed more, I've been doing my meditation before I go to bed for about like the last 3 weeks. Meditating, setting an intention, setting my intention, setting a thought process of where I want to go in my mind, unlocking it by saying my spirit, saying the spiritual password, my spirit name, full spiritual name when I go into that space. And then coming back, when I'm noticing that I'm coming back to this space, I'm in a different frequency. Instead of having to go to that frequency, instead of having to go to that frequency, I'm in that frequency. So I'm noticing my meditations have become astral projections. So my normal state of being is actually meditation. Like right now, I'm meditating. As I'm delivering the podcast, my mind is clear. I'm moving at 50 words a fucking minute. I'm putting everything out. I'm in a constant state of meditation. I'm in a constant state of clarity. I'm in a constant state of center. As I notice that I stay in this constant state of center, everything around me is still doing what it needs to do. If I look at it and it resonates with me, I'm able to, it doesn't resonate with me based on it's hitting a trigger. It's resonated with me in order for me to learn from it or to teach. So I'm catching the teaching moments because I'm always open as a student. Every time that I reanimate into this realm, back into this space, I have my body, my avatar is programmed to take on the day, do everything that I need to do. I see no stops. I see no reason to stop doing anything. I see no reason to not do what I need to do. I just do things. And I remember back in the day when I used to have this, I always had this reoccurring thought in my mind. I was like, I want to get to the point where when it comes time for me to do things, there's no reason for me not to do it. I'm able to knock out things in multitudes. I remember doing this earlier on in my, I think I was around like 20, 23, 24, like when I was around 23, 24. I think it was like 23, 25. I remember when this is when I was getting into acknowledging my traumas before I knew what shadow work was. Because I didn't know what the fuck shadow work was. I didn't even know I didn't know what none of them lectures were until 2015. But before that, I was sitting there and I was acknowledging, I remember just doing things just to do them. I remember my efficiency. I remember my bosses always saying like, yo, you gotta follow Los, because his efficiency is fucking crazy. He come to work, he come into the building with a plan to do something. If there's literally the escape of thinking there's nothing to do, he finds something to do within his space. He literally finds something to do. Whether it's to clean, organize, learn something, sit down at the computer, take some tests, he's literally doing it. So when I think about going into this, when I think about 2015, when I first started watching, the first lectures I was getting into was Bobby Hemmett lectures. Bobby Hemmett lectures led me to Dr. John Henry Clark's and Ben Yosef and like Shabazz and all these other, Phil Valentine's and all these aspects. And I noticed when I was taking in the information, I was taking it in faster because it was more like a reinforcing. Of course, the humanity was still there, so the ego was still there. So I found myself regurgitating a lot of information, but then it quickly was stopped. I was like, let me stop. And then I started actually allowing the information to permeate. And how the information was permeating, what getting into me was in real time, I was still dealing with the facets or the reflections of the traumas Whether it was being at my mother's house or being around my pops or being around my mom's, being around a family member, being around whatever it was, I was in real time seeing that what I was hearing that activated the light code. And then I remember I was listening to a panic lecture, and he was like, he speaks at a certain level of light. And even if you're not, even I can be speaking plain fucking English, but someone's not going to be able to understand what I'm saying because they're not ready for this level of light. And then when that shit hit me, I was like, yo, I remember every single day when I was doing God Thoughts in the beginning, because I got the God Hour page is still up. I put the meditative, I do the meditative elevates from that page, then I share them out from there. But I remember looking at my meditating the God Thoughts before they transitioned to meditating elevates, and I remember putting out information, and I remember ego was looking at the views, like, man, I ain't getting enough views, maybe I should stop. But I just kept going. The spirit was like, keep dropping, keep dropping, keep dropping, keep dropping, keep dropping. Just keep dropping. And then it came to a point I was like, I'm looking at the information that I put out then just a year ago. The stuff that I put out just a year ago, people are coming into realization of. That's the aspect of being the star player. That's the aspect of being the coach. That's the aspect of being the owner. That's the aspect of reanimating into your purpose. When you're doing what the fuck you supposed to be doing, it ain't to convince nobody out there. If it's time for them to get it, guess what? They're gonna have to catch up. That was I remember I thought about it when I was doing the podcast and I'm in season 3, and I was like, I didn't even think about, someone was like, damn, you already gonna start season 2? And season 1, I said, and I explained to them the reason why I did season 1 the way I did season 1. That was my training. That was me learning the aspects. Season 2, I wanted to step it up a notch, so I did the what's it called? But we'll get into this during the closeout. Stay tuned for this break, the plug talk, and then we're gonna finish this up. Thank you for choosing the God Hour. You know I had to keep you logged in with the plug talk. If you're interested in the services, from readings, you want a shadow reading, life path reading, consultation, natal chart analysis, spiritual products such as baths, awakening rituals. If you don't see it on the site, GodaCallAlchemistLLC.com. Hit me in my inbox and ask the question and see, hey, do you work on, do you do this, do you do that? Nothing. The only thing that's going to stop you is asking the question. GodaCallAlchemistLLC.com. To inbox me, to DM me on Facebook, it's Racolonijas, and IG is Papa_Lucy666. DM me your questions, set up a reading, set up a consultation. That's what I'm here for. What else? PapaLucy666@gmail.com. That's for you have a question about book lists, books that I've read, questions on books, questions on that. Also setting up readings, hit me on there. If you have a product, a service, a book, you want to get on, you want to build on an interview, let's do a nice little breakdown during an interview on the podcast, hit me at setcallonijas@gmail.com. Or you always can hit me at 910-777-7708, which reminds me I got a couple phone calls because I've been moving around all day. I got to get back to the phone call. I got to get back to the messages. Speaking of getting in tune, I've been getting a lot of people have been asking me, yo, someone need to do like actual shadow work, get deeper in the shadow work lecture. I did one around this time last year, Shadow Work the Ultimate Superpower. So now we're going to go deeper. The Goda Call Alchemist is the YouTube channel. Share, subscribe, like. Get your fill in there. The podcast is also shown on there. Playing on there. Last week we got into the aspects of spiritually transmitted diseases. This week we're going to get into the night of the living dead. Understanding the density of these shadows that are now in your face that you got to deal with. Motherfuckers walk around here trying to survive in the land of the dead. It is no longer working for you. It's no longer suitable. Tune in 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this Friday night for Night of the Living Dead on the Gotical Alchemist, the YouTube channel. That was about, I just want you to be fucking great. And the only way for you to be fucking great is to actually become honest in the shit that you need to do. If you need that assistance in your healing process, you need that help in unlocking that inner healing, that's what I'm here for. That's what I do this for. That's the whole purpose, to teach and to get you into the aspects of what you need to be working on to take yourself to the next level. But stay tuned for the closeout and a little bit more God though. I love you. We love us. I appreciate the support. To become a monthly patron or hit elusive assignment in the Cash App link to support the growth. We out here. Ashe. As we come to a close, I'm going to finish that last thought. As you're coming into this space, as you're coming into your realization, you're going into your quickening phase. As I adjust the microphone, I don't know why I keep touching the mic. That level of light that you're going to be coming into, accessing those light codes, allowing that work to work, allowing what needs to happen, is going to cause a lot of blindness. It's going to cause a lot of blindness. It's going to cause a lot of blindness in this face. It's going to cause a lot of blindness in the factor that a lot of people are not going to be able to come to where you're coming to. A lot of people are not going to be able to go to where you're going. You have to be able to accept this fact that honesty and transparency is going to be that key to that. You're going to see what you're going to start seeing literally if you're doing your work. You're going to start seeing people act within that terrible two narrative. You're going to start seeing people act within that troublesome teen narrative. You're going to see the hurt. You're going to see the aspects of hurt in reflection more clearly. You're going to see people for their true. You're going to see people for their true aspects of nature. You're going to start seeing people for what they're truly there for. This is you taking you out of the aspect of emotion. Remember, this is all taking you out of the aspect of emotion. You have to see this from outside of that space of emotion. The reason being is that if you're within the wave of the emotion, you cannot gain clarity on how to control the current or how to move with that current. You are not going to be able to follow that merrily down the stream to see that this is nothing but a dream. Row your boat. The answers have been right there, been taught to you this entire time. From every nursery rhyme to every fairy tale that you were taught, every myth that you were given, Aesop's fables and all of that shit, all that's within your inner child. And those are just some of the programs that you're gonna have to tap into. And it's becoming more and more clear as long as you're doing the work. And if you right here right now, I can tell that it's either resonating with you to start your work or to continue doing your work. There's nothing greater than being in love with yourself. There's nothing more fulfilling than being filled with that true essence of your power. Knowing that you're on the right path. But in order, just like motherfuckers say you had to go through a bunch of bad relationships to understand what to do in a good one. Really think about that the next time you say it. Say that to yourself before you go to bed tonight. You had to go through a bunch of bad relationships, a batch of bad pairings, in order to learn what it is to be inside that good one. We can go on and on and on. But yeah, we're going to continue this tonight. If you listening right now, remember tonight, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, via Facebook Live. Rock All It Needs is the Facebook page. If you did not get that out of the Plug Talk, get it right now. Facebook Live. We don't go a little bit further into the aspects of that project, Revert. And that's going to lead us into the aspects of the Night of the Walking Dead lecture that I got popping off Friday. But you are in a good space right now. You're in a space to learn. You're in a space to embrace. It's your choice whether to invest in the changes to evolve or stay reverting to repeat. I ain't coming back here with baby brain. Few of us gonna make it. Even few of us gonna step through. Few of us are going to be called. Even fewer of us are going to accept the call. And even fewer of us are going to make the call in the investment of our elevation. This has been another episode of the God Hour Podcast. This has been your host, your master of ceremonies, your spiritual occult teacher, and occult psychologist, Papa Lucifer. I love you. We love us. We out of here. Ashe.